Hi, welcome back. I'm Surya. In this video, we will take a closer look at bar graphs, how they are different from line graphs, and what terms like static and dynamic data really mean in IELTS Writing Task 1. Let's get started. Let's begin with a simple question. What is a bar graph? A bar graph is a visual representation of data using rectangular bars. The length or height of the bar shows the value of each item being measured. We often use bar graphs to compare quantities across different categories or sometimes to show changes over time. Now here is something interesting. Bar graphs can be presented in two formats, vertical and horizontal. Now take a look at these two graphs. What do you notice? They actually show the same data. The number of male and female academic staff from 2015 to 2020. But they look quite different, don't they? Let's see why. The graph on the left is a vertical bar graph. The bars stand upright, going up from the x-axis. The years are displayed along the bottom, and the height of each bar tells us the number of staff. And the graph on the right is a horizontal bar graph. Here the bars stretch across from the y-axis. The years are listed on the vertical axis, and the length of each bar tells us the number of staff. So which one is better? Actually, they both show the same thing, just in different ways. It just depends on how the data is displayed. In IELTS, you are more likely to see vertical bar graphs. But that doesn't mean horizontal ones won't appear. You could get any type of bar graph, so it's good to be prepared. Now let's see what happens when we show the same data using a line graph instead. Now that you are familiar with what a bar graph is and the difference between vertical and horizontal formats, let's take this a step further. Look at both the graphs on the slide. The bar graph and the line graph show the same data, the number of male and female academic staff from 2015 to 2020. Because this data shows change over time, we refer to it as dynamic data. It includes multiple time points and allows us to see how values rise or fall. The only difference is in how the data is displayed. One uses bars and the other uses lines. Even though the numbers are identical, the visual impression is quite different. The line graph gives you a smooth sense of movement or trend, while the bar graph divides the information into clear individual stages, so you notice each year more distinctly. And here is something useful to remember. The description of a dynamic bar graph is almost the same as that of a line graph, because both show how values change over time. So if the data is dynamic, it doesn't matter whether it's in bars or lines. Your overall approach to describing it will be very similar. So we have seen how dynamic data can be shown using either a bar graph or a line graph. Now let's explore something really important: the differences between static and dynamic data in bar graphs. Let's go back to the vertical bar graph we saw earlier, the one showing the number of male and female academic staff from 2015 to 2020. What's happening here? What do you see changing here? Yes, the numbers change year by year. This is exactly what we call dynamic data, because it shows how something changes over time. In this case, we can track how the number of male and female staff went up or down from year to year. Now compare that with this graph on the right. It shows the number of students in different disciplines like arts, science, engineering, and so on in one semester. Do you see any time reference here? No, there isn't any time reference here. This is an example of static data. It gives us a snapshot of one moment in time, not a trend or change over several years. So we have now seen both types of bar graphs, one that shows change and the one that shows comparison at a single point in time. Now that we have seen both graphs, let's look at the key differences between static and dynamic data. First, let's look at the time reference. Static data shows us information at a single point in time, like 1 year, 1 month, or sometimes there is no time reference at all. Dynamic data includes multiple time points. It shows change over time. Second, what does the graph actually show? Static data focuses on comparisons between categories. Dynamic graphs focus on trends, meaning how things go up, down, or stay the same across time. The next one is the layout. Static data is usually presented using bar graphs. Dynamic data can appear as either line or bar graphs, and you will always see the time on the x-axis. Now let's look at some examples of time. A static graph might say in semester 1 or in 2022. A dynamic graph might say from 2015 to 2020 or from Friday to Sunday. Anything that covers a time range and shows change. Finally, we will look at the kind of vocabulary we should use. Static graphs require one set of vocabulary and dynamic graphs require another. For static graphs, you will use comparison language like more than, less than, the same amount, and so on. But if it's a dynamic graph, your focus will shift to how things change over time. So you will need verbs like rose, fell, increased, declined, remained steady, and so on. So, as you can see, the type of data affects not just what you see, but also how you describe it. But why is this distinction important? Because recognizing whether the graph is static or dynamic helps you decide what structure to use, what vocabulary to choose, and what kind of features to focus on when writing your IELTS Task 1 report. Before we end, let's check your understanding with a quick activity. I'll show you 3 bar graphs. Your task is simple. Decide whether the data is static or dynamic. Here is our first graph. What do you think? Is it static or dynamic? Yes, it's dynamic because it shows how the population in New York, Tokyo, Mumbai, and London changed across 3 time points: 2010, 2015, and 2020. So we describe the changes. For example, the population of Mumbai increased gradually from 2010 to 2020. But here is something important. Sometimes, even in dynamic graphs, we use static style descriptions. For example, if we want to highlight one moment in time, we might say, in 2010, Mumbai had the highest population among the 4 cities. This helps us give specific comparisons at one point in time, even while describing overall changes. Here is the second graph. Is it static or dynamic? Right, this one is static. It shows data from just 1 year, 2022, and compares the number of students across 5 disciplines: engineering, medicine, business, arts, and law. So we focus on comparisons, not changes. For example, engineering had the highest number of students, while law had the lowest. Or, in 2022, medicine had the second highest number of students among the 5 disciplines. There is no timeline, so we don't talk about rising or falling numbers. Here is our third graph. What do you think? Is it static or dynamic? Yes, this is another dynamic graph because it shows how sales changed in North America, Europe, and Asia over 5 years. We can describe trends in this graph. For example, sales in North America rose steadily from 2018 to 2022. And again, we can make a useful static observation too. For example, in 2020, North America had the highest sales among all 3 regions. Here, we want to highlight one moment in time, that is, in 2020. This mix of dynamic and static description adds variety and clarity to your writing. Let's quickly review what we have covered in this video. First, bar graphs can be vertical or horizontal. Both are used in IELTS, so it's important to be familiar with both formats. Second, bar graphs may show either static or dynamic data. Static data gives us a snapshot of one point in time, while dynamic data shows how things change over time. Third, the kind of language you use depends on the type of data. With static graphs, you make comparisons, like more than or the same as. With dynamic graphs, you describe trends over a period of time. Using verbs such as increased, fell, or remained steady. Also, when describing a dynamic bar graph, your approach can be very similar to describing a line graph, because both show trends and changes over time. And here is an important point. Even in dynamic graphs, we sometimes use static style descriptions to highlight what's highest or lowest at a specific moment. So the most important thing is, before you start writing, always check what kind of data you are looking at. It helps you choose the right structure, vocabulary, and focus for your IELTS Task 1 response. In the next videos, we will focus on how to write full descriptions for static and dynamic bar graphs step by step. So stay tuned. Thank you for watching. I hope this video gave you a clear understanding of bar graphs. Stay tuned for upcoming videos and best of luck with your IELTS preparation. If you found this content useful, feel free to share it with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe for more IELTS tips and lessons.